Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui in Beijing. This year's Congress of the Transplantation Society was held in Hong Kong from August the 18th to 23rd, the first time for such a meeting to be held in China. China now has the most organ donations per year in Asia and the third highest number globally. How did this achievement come about? What lessons can we draw for public policy in this field? And what challenges continue to face the country's organ donation program? To discuss these issues and more, I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by Dr. Zheng Zhe, Professor of Cardiovascular Surgery at Fuwai Hospital, and Mr. Wang Haibo, Director of the China Organ Transplant Response System, will join us via satellite from Hong Kong. Before we get started, let's take a look at this.
It took 10 years for China to make the first step in organ transplantation reform. But that step was a major turning point. Addressing the attendees at the International Congress of the Transplantation Society in Hong Kong, Chinese Representative Huang Jiefu said the efforts to push reforms must continue.
We started a very hard journey, 1 decade. In the years of 2005, the changes started from transparency. 2007 is Human Organ Transplantation Regulation issued by the State Council, paved the way for a legal framework to guide the organ transplantation in China. In 2014, I announced the Stop Using Death Row Inmates' Organs for Transplantations.
With the management system and regulations in place, progress is visible. The rate of organ donation has kept rising since the voluntary organ donation trial started in 2010.
I'm very happy to tell all the TTS friends the momentum continues in the years of 2016. Compared with the same period of last year, there's around 49.2% increase. We are expecting this year will be over 4,000 organ donations.
But in order to meet the huge demand, China needs to double the number of transplant hospitals from its current 169, and it needs more organ donation coordinators.
In 2012-13, before to come, here was not doctors trained in organ donation. And now they have 50 have been visiting Spain, and 500 that we train here in China. No?
Currently, China is training a total of 1,200 coordinators with help from the international community. The nation will also draw on foreign experience in the expansion of medical insurance coverage for organ transplantation and in building a green channel for organ transportation.
Welcome to our studio discussion here with Dr. Zheng from Fuwai Hospital. Now, you just came back from Hong Kong, where you attended the China session of the international meeting. How important was it for this China session to be held? It's the first of its kind.
Yeah, actually, this is a very exciting and impressive meetings, because this is the first time that China participated in the Society of the Transplantation, the meetings, because before that, they cannot accept China, but now they accept China.
Why did they decide to accept China?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, because before with the donors, the reasons. But since 2015, we began the new systems. We get all the donor from the DCD and from the organ from donors. So actually, in 2015 and the 2016, we can got a lot of the DCD and the donor, and the number is actually we get the third of in the world and the first in the Asia.
What does the DCD stand for?
It means the brain death donor.
I see.
Yeah.
Let me cross over to Mr. Wang, who's standing by in Hong Kong. He is still present at the Congress, the international conference. Hello, Mr. Wang. The same question for you.
Hi.
Why do you think the China session was held in Hong Kong, or what issues would be highlighted on this very important occasion?
Well, International Transplant Congress of TTS hold every 2 years, so it's the biggest event in our transplant community. And for this year, because China have achieved its great progress in the transplant reform, so the Chinese professionals now allowed to present our data and the clinical experience and contribute to the rest of the world. And so that is very significant event in our community. So for this China session, and we have lots of the major transplant professionals from China to present our work during 2015 and 2016 since the full implementation of the new system. So this is the meaning of this China session in this International Transplant Society. Also, the most important is Professor Jeffu Huang, the director of National Organ Donation and the Transplant Committee, was invited to give a presidential speech in the plenary session, which is the only one this kind of keynote speaker every 2 years. So it's quite a recognition for the effort and the progress we made in the reform of organ transplant in China.
I was discussing with Dr. Zheng about why China has just been accepted as a member of the International Society regarding the use of donated organs. Now, how can the International Society be completely convinced that ever since the law that came into being on January the 1st of last year came into being to comprehensively ban the use of organs from the executed prisoner, that nothing of the sort could ever happen again? Mr. Wang.
Yeah, you asked me. Sorry about that. So that's a very good question, because that is a question we have been asked so many times in the International Congress. First, I think just like what Professor Huang mentioned in his presentation in the plenary session, that our change, our reform, start from the transparency. So the transparency is the key point for us to establish the trust, not only for the international community, but also for the Chinese people. So that's why we established the first thing before we start the pilot program for organ donation in China. We established the China National Organ Allocation Computer System, we call it CORTAS. It's consistent with the WHO guiding principle, and is consistent with international standard to ensure the organ allocation is fair, transparent, and just. So, and this system also empowers us to establish the traceability of the data, which is tied to the traceability of the organ, where the organ came from and where the organ goes. And that transparency will bring the trust to the Chinese people on new organ donation system, and will bring the trust to the international society to believe actually China now has a brand new system.
It's true. It seems to be true that more and more members of the International Society choose to believe that China wants to become a major responsible stakeholder by, for example, accepting the oversight from international body like WHO to execute the oversight and to help improve governance in this organ donation system. Now, what do you think of the issue of exercising effective oversight for the execution of the new law? Are you sure that nothing would go wrong?
Well, of course, there's law in every country, and there is a criminal activity in every country. That's why we need a legal enforcement. That's why we need police, and National Organ Allocation Computer System is the official mandatory system for organ allocation. In 2013, the regulation was issued by the National Health and Family Commission that out-system allocation is forbidden. So this system, we call it quotas, is just like the police in the transplant community. And every organ donation in this system is legitimate. But of course, we cannot rule out the people they are violating the law. So legal enforcement is one of the most important part of the new organ donation system. Just mentioned by Professor Huang in his speech, since 2007, there are many brokers and the medical staff who violated the regulation has their transplant license revoked for the hospital and doctor license revoked and has the under the criminal investigation and convicted into jail. So that is something we need to further enforce. And meanwhile, we are using the big data technology to interlink the quotas with the other database, such like the National Insurance Database and National Death Database. Use this big data technology, and we are augmenting the capacity of the regulatory power of the whole organ donation and transplant system.
A closer look at the attitude of the Chinese government, or to be more precise, a closer look at the change in the attitude of the Chinese authorities. People like me, observers who follow the development, are still surprised that we openly admitted previously the use of organs from the executed prisoners had been institutionalized systematically. I mean, what has brought about the change in the Chinese government's attitude to promote the transparency and to admit, yes, we had made mistakes. Now we are able to face the past and we look into the future with more confidence?
Well, I think you mentioned a very important point that the organ transplantation is for the purpose of saving people's life. And so in order to save people's life, we must have a sustainable and ethical organ sources which is consistent with WHO principles. So that's why the transplant professionals all believe, just like Professor Huang said in his speech, that the future of the transplantation in China rely on the inside the hospital, just like the rest of the world. And the future of the transplant professionals of the young generation, like Professor Zheng sitting beside you, like myself, should rely on this new system that is consistent with the international standard. So that is why we have the determination. But it won't happen if we don't have the determination and recognition and support from government. Because from the WHO, from the guiding principle, it's the government responsibility to have the legislation, to establish the accountable organization, to conduct the regulatory and to oversee the organ donation and the transplant system. In fact, I'm sitting in the many committees in TTS and DICG. We are all talking about in many countries is lacking of support from the government. But now, since we have this reform, we have regulations, and then most recently we have 6 ministries of the Chinese government developed a green channel policy which ensure the priority of organ transportation for transplant organs. So that is the symbol that the Chinese government recognize importance of the transplantation for people's health and recognize that the human life is on the priority. So that is the most important part. So that gives us the confidence that Chinese system will be established very effective.
Thank you very much. You're watching Dialogue with Dr. Zheng Zhe from the Fuwai Hospital and Mr. Wang Haibo, Director of the China Organ Transplant Response System. We're discussing the implementation of a very important law that came into being on January the 1st of last year concerning legitimate organ donation and why China has been accepted as a decent member by the international society to justify the use of legitimate donation of organs. We'll be back and we'll be joined again after the break by Mr. Wang and Dr. Zheng. We're discussing a very important issue, so stay with us, please. Welcome back, gentlemen. You are a real professional, a heart transplant surgeon. Now, how difficult is the situation in China for the donors and for the recipients?
Yeah, actually, the heart transplantation is a little bit more complex than the other organ transplantations, and sometimes it's more severe. The patient is more sick and more severe, and need more a system device to help the patients. So actually, the heart, the donor, or the organ, its requirement, the shortest ischemia times than other organ. For example, the heart organ, it's maybe we require no more than 6 hours during the transport the times, but the lung can to 8 hours, and the liver can be 12 hours. The kidney could be 24 hours, something. So it's very important for the heart organs. We require a very short transport system from the one hospital to another hospital.
It means efficiency of the preservation largely depends on transportation itself.
Yes.
And technically, it's a pretty tough requirement for you guys to protect the heart very well and to use the transplant the heart just in time.
Yeah.
Now, a question for both of you, as expert in this very special profession. We have a Chinese saying, 死者为大，入土为安.
Yes.
Despite the bold reform to improve the institutions or system of organ donation in China, which boasts of a very unique history and culture, it means this part of Chinese culture may have prevented affected families from donating the organs. We have a saying now, the body intact, quote, without organs having been removed, must either be buried or cremated before the spirit can rest in peace. That's what we call 入土为安. So a question for both of you. First of all, Mr. Wang, do you think this has seriously prevented the Chinese from donating the organs?
I think it's the wrong idea, because people would think that the culture of Chinese society is preventing the organ donation, which is not true, because we never ask our people. We never establish a system to allow them to express their wish, and we never establish an organ donation system to allow the people to donate if they want to. So that is the bottleneck, and that is what we have been working so hard during the last 10 years to establish. And yes, organ donation and transplantation system is, they have the international standard, but it's also deeply rooted in its culture, so of each country. So I think during the past several years, established since 2015, we have proved that Chinese people actually, they are willing to donate organs. And organ donation is about, death. We're talking about death. But when you're talking about death, actually, you are talking about the value of life. So people, when they talk about organ donation, they start to think about what is the value of life, and what we can give and what we can receive. So organ donation and transplant system is much larger than the transplantation itself, larger than medicine. Actually is touch the deep root of our culture, of our society. And the number have proved that Chinese culture is supportive for organ donation.
Thank you very much for the sense and sensibility concerning this very sensitive issue. Now, on the other hand, Mr. Wang, some families would like to donate their dead relatives' organs in order to create better karma. Do you know the word karma? Or goodwill for the afterlife or reincarnation of the deceased. And at the same time, no money is accepted, as this would taint the donation. Can you accept this? It has something to do with the commercial aspect of the issue.
Well, there is a very clear WHO principle that no payment should be attached to organ donation. And just like Professor Huang's declaration in his presentation in TTS Congress, that in China, organ donation should not have any payment which is inconsistent with the WHO guiding principle. And we are developing ethical and legally sensible policies regarding the cost. I believe you mentioned the cost. A cost actually happened during the process of the organ donation, organ preservation, and transplantation. But that is separate from the payment for the organs, which is not allowed.
Let me tell you a story, and I invite both of you to make comments. Some years ago, a 7-year-old boy was crushed to death, unfortunately, by a big rock from the hillside in an accident. Now, the parents decided to donate organs to this boy, but the parents refused to be paid. The local Red Cross Society decided, and they ended up making a decision to compensate for the education fees of the younger brother of the dead until the age of 18. Do you think this is a good approach so that they could avoid the principle or violating the principle of the WHO? Now, first of all, Dr. Zheng.
Yeah, so if we got the donor to have their organs, we cannot to pay for that, for the organ. Mm-hmm. But we can, we call the assistance, we call the help system for this family and for to help them. I think this is fair.
Now, Mr. Wang, what is the understatement for this approach by the local Red Cross Society? Does it mean they have to encourage more prospective and potential donors to give conditional donation? I mean, it's a bad idea to talk about payment according to principle of WHO, but you have to compensate for the sacrifice one way or another so that potentially more and more donors will emerge. Is that an understatement?
Well, I disagree with you, the word you are using, that compensate for the sacrifice. We recognize the sacrifice of the donor family. And it's very important. Yes, we have the humanitarian responsibility to have the disadvantaged donor family as well as the disadvantaged transplant family. But that is relying on the existing humanitarian system for the whole country, regardless their donor or what. So there are many countries, they have the funeral fee provided to the donor family, and they have the social support system to help the donor family. The case you raised about some local government and as well as the relief department of the Red Cross to help this family for their younger brother to get education, and that is using the existing humanitarian system of the Red Cross or the civil service. And we have very strict rule. If the humanitarian aid is required, and they must be using the existing social supporting system and must be separate from the decision of the organ donation, and the time must be after whether they can receive the support, the humanitarian aid or not, or how much they can receive must be decided after the decision of the organ donation. And what we can do, the transplant organ donation system, is to provide support to the family to navigate through this process, which is recognized, accepted by international society as providing the social support to the family.
Despite the remarkable progress that has been made ever since the law came into being last January, the number of organ donation and transplants still remains pretty low given the sizable population of China, which is of course 1.3 billion. Therefore, the last question, Mr. Wang, is, do you believe a sharp increase in the number of donation or transplant would largely depend on, for example, level of education, level of prosperity, or level of faith or religious belief? Do you believe all these factors are important in their contribution to the rapid rise of such a number, hopefully?
Yes, the efficiency of the organ donation and system of the country is quite important, but the design of system is very delicate. The number is currently large. In terms of the absolute number in the world, we are ranking as number 3, but we used a word PMP, which means per million population, the donor number. China is only 2. So we have this large number because of just what you said is because of large population, but we really need to build up our efficiency of our system. If we can perform our donation like the efficiency of Spain, which is ranked number 1 in the world, on 40 PNP, and you can calculate how many numbers of donors we can have and how many patients we can save. Meanwhile, there are so many speculation about the number of transplantation in China, and especially in this Congress. After Professor Huang gave his speech, I was approached by many international leaders of transplantation, and they said it's powerful, it's direct, it's convincing, but we are so consumed by this response to this no sense of speculation of China have the huge number of transplantation equal to the entire world. And every transplant professionals I met, they talk with me, said we want to go back to the science, go back to the academic work, try to help our patient instead of the response to the wild speculations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang and Dr. Zheng, for briefing our audience about the remarkable progress we have made. Of course, it's made with pains. And we thank you also very much for briefing us on challenges that are still lying ahead. With that, we come to the end of this very enlightening discussion about organ donation and organ transplantation in China. Until next time, goodbye.